So we're here this morning in reference to the voting irregularities here in Macon Bibb. As you all know, during early voting and during on election day, we had voters that were receiving the incorrect ballots. And as of today, they promised us that they would make those corrections. But as of yesterday, our ballots are still incorrect. There are certain streets in the districts that are on the ballot that the candidates are not on their ballots. Myself, when I checked my sample ballot, we were in the wrong district as of yesterday. So it's very important that we get this message out to the voters that's going to be affected by in District 3, District 8, and District 145, that we get the message out, because we want to make sure that people have the correct ballots. When you come into the Board of Elections or any of the early voting sites, you need to make sure that you get a sample ballot so you'll have the information on there so you'll know what candidates that you should be voting for, and you can reference to that sample ballot. You just want to make sure that people are aware that there's still issues with the ballots, that people are not on their ballots. So early voting started today, but what we want to make sure is that people have the correct ballots. The runoff election day is June 18th. We're hoping that it's corrected, but if it don't, we had the same issue. They told us that it would be corrected on May 21st, which it was not corrected. So this will affect the runoff. If people are not in the correct ballot, actually voters will get, candidates will get votes that they shouldn't receive, and candidates will get votes that they should have gotten, they didn't get. So that's the issue, that if there's incorrect ballots, then that will affect the runoff, because it still wouldn't be correct, because as I stated, that people would get the incorrect, vote for the incorrect candidate. Yes, we will be actually looking into that also, that we did have an issue with one of the precincts, and that actually precinct is still is one of the precincts that will be here in the early voting, that it was barricaded off, so voters could not get into the polling place, and that caused a lot of lower voter turnout. Also, some of those voters actually went to another precinct to vote that could not vote until after 5 o'clock. And so the fact is, whether or not they came back is an issue, because they weren't able to vote in their precinct that they were supposed to vote in, because they thought it was closed, because it was barricaded off, which is a very serious situation, because we're supposed to be able to have access to the polls. And when you don't have access to the polls and you're not able to vote, then the voters are disenfranchised. And we need to make sure that their votes are protected. Well, we've been coming to meetings with the Board of Elections to make sure that things will be corrected in the upcoming runoff. But the message that we want to send to the Board of Elections is that we have to get it right. I know that they're working hard, and we're not trying to blame anyone, but someone is at fault. And we have to make sure that, it doesn't happen again. I'm saying this is we're coming up in an election in November, we have to get it right. And we just want them to, make sure that they get it right. They promised us that it would be right, that they will have things in place, and I don't see anyone here today that they told us that they would have someone here that would be able to read the maps when people come in, make sure they have sample ballots. That may be inside the polling place. But those are the things that they promised us, that they would have someone in the Board of Elections to read the maps, to get people in it, so they'll make sure that they have the right ballots. Well, we've been speaking to the Board of Elections itself, the entire Board of Elections. We've had special call meetings, so the NAACP has attended all of those meetings. Normally, we attend all the meetings anyway, all the monthly meetings. We get a count, everyday count of all the early votings that is emailed to us from the Board of Elections. So we're keeping up with that on a daily basis, but we've attended all the meetings. We're speaking with the attorneys for the Board of Elections. We're speaking with the chair of the Board of Elections, but actually it's the entire Board of Elections that we're meeting with.
And I just want to make clear, Attorney Gerald Griggs, President of the Georgia State Conference, we're standing in solidarity with Macon Bibb, but this is a problem that can affect voters throughout the state of Georgia, and we are monitoring all election irregularities. And so for anybody that has any problems exercising their right to vote, they can call 866 our vote. We are manning the phones. We've also made contact with our attorneys, and so we want to make it clear to the local election board that we are monitoring this issue and will have all available options on the table. We want to make sure that they correct the ballot irregularities, both from the previous primary and of course the runoff, and we don't want to see this issue moving forward into the November primary. So it's not just the Macon NAACP, it's the entire state conference and our attorneys that are on alert for any irregularities in any county in Georgia, but particularly we have our eyes on Macon Bibb.
The Board of Elections, we addressed the ADA, where the Board of Elections needs to be handicap accessible. In the meeting, they told us that they were working on allowing people with disabilities to maybe vote at the library when you first come in. I don't see that set up, so that's one of the concerns that we have today. They still have not addressed the ADA, Americans with Disability Act, to make sure that voters have access, because when we were here last and doing the early voting, there were people that when they got in here and saw the distance they had to walk, they came back out. They did not vote. And so they told us that in the last meeting that they were going to be looking at having voters with disabilities when you first come in, and I don't see that today.
And just curious, those voters who told you that they decided to walk back out, were they in wheelchairs? Were they in crutches? Were they?
No, some of them. One of them was someone that actually had an absentee ballot that they thought it was at the front door.
Oh, right here.
Right, but it's actually inside the Board of Elections. And so the distance, the Board of Elections have addressed that themselves, have stated that the distance was too far for people to vote. And so we're concurring with that. We were out here last year, and those were our concerns, and they told us that they were gonna, actually when you come in, there's no signage, period, that says that the Board of Election even exists in the mall. And so people don't know where to come when they get to the mall. And then when they get to the mall, the distance from the front door parking lot to the Board of Elections is a struggle for people to get to the polls. And so we need to make sure that they have access to the poll, but they have not, they didn't follow through with the promise that they promised us.
Good. Unless there's anything you all want to add. Anything else?
And the early voting sign is not outside to say that the Board of Election, that early voting is started. And that's something else that we talked about in the last meeting, that they needed to, the Board of Elections needs to put more information out in the media that early voting or the runoff election is taking place. And I haven't really heard anything in the media from the Board of Elections regarding the early voting has started.